What's up, Gran Turismo fans? Would you like some more free coaching? Welcome to the first installment of the Precision Driving School. This is a brand new series aimed directly at helping you get faster. Once or twice a month, I'll put a message on the Digit Racing Discord asking for people to share their qualifying laps in-game, where I will pick someone to feature in the video and I'll analyse your lap comparing it to mine, using both telemetry and replays. There is a link to the Digit Racing Discord server on both mine and Digit's YouTube channels if you'd like to join us there. Unlike other videos I've done, this one is open to everyone, not just existing students. For the first one, I asked for a B or low A rank driver, but we will do these for all DR levels. Today's subject driver is Diogo Silva from Portugal. He is B rank and he set a 1:39.494 at Fuji. That's his lap on the left, and the reference lap on the right is me, which at the time of recording this video on Thursday was P25 Global. So let's start by explaining the key problem areas in the lap, and then we'll go deeper into things with telemetry, and I'll also use the replay walk mode feature to make sure that the point is really driven home for those of you who struggle to see the issues in telemetry. So starting with turn 1, he trail brakes into this corner too early, which has the effect of slowing the car down too much. This can be very much solved by his braking point. Again, we'll be going into this with a little bit more detail. Turn 3, goes in way too fast, comes out way too slow, needs to be the other way round. Turn 4, this is probably the single biggest time loss. This needs to be a lot narrower, nowhere near as wide. This is what I talk about when I say low rank drivers mistake understeer for speed. Turn 5, doesn't use enough track on the entry, doesn't slow it down enough for the apex, has to run really wide to make up for that on the exit. We'll explain this one. Basically it's fast in, slow out again. Heading down into the chicane, trail brakes too early again, which actually results in the car being too fast on the apex. Final few turns, last sector at Fuji. Basically what it comes down to is use more track and go into these turns a little bit slower. What he's doing is fundamentally quite good. He's got pretty good control of the brake and the throttle here, pretty good car sympathy. As much as it doesn't look like it, he's actually going into these turns too fast, which prevents him from getting rotation. Let's dig into this with an analysis. Okay, so let's look at turn 1 then, and Diogo is in blue and I am in yellow. I had to do it that way round in order to get the gap to show the time loss rather than the time gain. So, looking at turn 1, look at the brake traces here. Again, Diogo in blue, as I said, is trail braking into the corner way earlier than I am, me in yellow. So, what's actually going on here is a problem with the braking point. If we look at the relative speed coming in, he is 160.3, I'm 161. This happens because he doesn't get as fast an exit out of the final corner as I do, so naturally he's not carrying as much speed down the straight. It seems like nothing, but it actually is everything in this corner, because he actually brakes marginally earlier than me. Now, it's not by much, it's about a meter or two. I checked the replay. He's basically trying to brake exactly where he should, but he's got to adapt that braking point for his skill level. In this case, because he's going slower at the time of hitting the brakes, he needs to actually brake a little bit later. This in turn will force him to stay at 100% brake for longer, because what happens here is he trail brakes out too early. Now, the reason he does this is because there is a sixth sense inside you, an unconscious thought. I see this all the time in coaching students. You know that the car has slowed down too much for the corner. You just don't know that you know it yet. It's completely subconscious. And so in order to not slow the car down too much, or to try and compensate for slowing the car down too much, you trail brake earlier to keep the speed up. The next problem is, because the car has slowed down too much in the corner, you get on the throttle too early. And that's what we see here. If you look at the red line here, where he's actually released the brake is way too early in the corner, and then he gets on the throttle actually in the braking zone. Now, again, I'm going to show you this from replays because this is not obvious to people who aren't good with telemetry. But essentially, the problems all start with the braking point. So he's got to brake later, abuse the ABS more. If you watch my recent This is a Free Coaching Session video, I explained how to brake into different corners. This is a very slow first, second gear hairpin. You don't want to trail brake into it much. You've got to abuse the ABS and then let the brake go rather quickly in a controlled fashion. That's what you're seeing here. The trail brake out is almost as much as a sharp drop off as the initial ramp up of the brake in the first place. So let's go to the overhead view and you can see in a bit more detail what's happening here. So that's me on the inside, Diogo Silva on the outside. And you can see that I'm still braking into the corner. So this is where I'm releasing the brake, and that's where he's released the brake. So again, it's way too early. Simply braking later is going to force you to stay on the brake harder for longer, not trail brake as much, and release the brake later. This is where it's important to adapt the braking point for your personal skill level. What Diogo's done here is paid super close attention to where the top 10 times are braking, and he has nailed it to within about 1.5 meters, but it's too early for his skill level, basically. Then what happens is he gets on the throttle in the braking zone. So look at this dotted line. That's how long he coasts for, and then he's on the throttle when I'm still on the brake. And then I'm coasting up to the apex, whereas he's accelerating into the apex when I'm coasting. What this means, this is about throttle timing. Again, it's going to be fixed by the braking point, but this is also about throttle timing. When you get on the throttle this early, the car isn't ready to accept an aggressive throttle input. So all you end up doing is dragging the throttle and pushing the car wide rather than getting good acceleration. Let's go and look at this quickly in the replay. So this is Diogo Silva's braking point, and if I come around the side here, that is extremely close to where I'm braking. I'm not going to show you mine, I don't want to waste too much time, but suffice to say the bonnet of my car is about 1 meter in front of his. So he's really nailed the top 10 perfect braking point. But as I said, because he's moving slower, he's got to brake later. And then you can see here that he's already started trail braking. We already saw in the telemetry that I'm still 100% on the brake here. He's trail braking. He's doing this because he knows the car is slowing down too much. He just doesn't know that he knows it yet. Again, still trail braking too early. And then he's off the brake, and look at the throttle. So I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see it. He is already on the throttle. And just to show you where this is not where you throttle out of the corner, guys. This is way too early to be accelerating out of the corner. So what happens there is he slowed the car down too much, trail brake too early to compensate for that, then got on the throttle in the braking zone to compensate for that. In this case, what he needs to do is bring more speed into the corner by braking later, but then slow the car down by abusing the ABS and not trail braking so early, and then being more patient on the throttle. Turn 3, and we're going to stick to the telemetry for this one. I've got the cars stopped in the overhead view at the split for sector 1. Now watch what happens as we go into turn 3. So he actually edges in front of me entering turn 3. And then I overtake him on the exit. So he's gone faster in, slower out. I've gone slower in, faster out. Let's look at why that happened. So this is the braking trace for turn 3. Again, Diogo is in blue, I'm in yellow. So why does he come into the corner too fast and exit too slow? Well, for one, I use 100% brake pressure only for a nanosecond. It's not for very long at all. Don't hit 100% and stay there. Hit 100% and immediately start backing off. He uses about 90% brake, so he doesn't brake as hard as me, which means he doesn't slow the car down as much as me. He also brakes later, which again means he's not slowing the car down as much as me, and then he's off the brake earlier than me, which again means he's not slowing the car down as much as me, which means he's actually entering the corner with 104 miles an hour. I'm still on the brake at the apex, so I actually overlap here. If we move the lines to the end of my brake trace, so looking at the yellow line at the end of my brake trace, you can see I'm actually on the throttle at the same time. This is one such corner where it's not essential to coast. Some guys do, some guys don't. I actually overlap them here, but at that apex point where I'm overlapping, you can see that I'm doing 101 miles an hour. He is doing 100.1 miles an hour. He is basically 2 miles an hour faster than me at the apex. That means he gets a slow exit because he now has to be careful on the throttle. And that's what you're seeing here. Because he's going too fast on the exit, he has to feed the throttle in carefully to not run too wide. He could run wider, to be fair, and be more aggressive on it, but it's not the main problem. The main problem is the braking entry. Whereas I am a lot more aggressive on the throttle because I slowed the car down more. We then get to turn 4, the big, long, sweeping right-hander. Now this I am going to show you from the replay so it makes a little bit more sense, but just look at the lines to begin with. So I'm keeping it really, really tight. I'm going to show you what this actually means you need to do on the track. He's running wider already. He's not on the inside of the track. There's a principle I want you to take on board with corners like this. To be honest, this applies to every corner, but especially with big, long, sweeping corners. The fastest way around the track is the inside of the track. I want you to think about it like, for example, a 400-meter athletic track in an Olympic stadium. When you see those guys running around that track doing, for example, the 10K, do they run round in lane 1 or lane 8? They run round in lane 1 because it's the shortest distance. The trap that Diogo's falling into here is extremely common, and that is that you feel uncomfortable getting out of the throttle to keep it tighter. You feel like if you get out the throttle, you're going slower. And what ends up happening is you keep the throttle in to try and make the car go faster, but all that's happening is you're understeering and you're mistaking that understeering feeling for speed. It's not. What's happening is you've got too much throttle down, you're turning the wheel too much by extension of having too much throttle, which causes too much tire wear, and it's also scrubbing the fronts, which means you're also scrubbing speed. You're taking a wider circumference, a longer line. It is literally taking you longer to go round the outside faster than it is to go round the inside slower. Simple as that. I also use some brake in order to keep it tight to the inside. It's not essential. You can do it entirely with throttle control. And you can see he's running really, really wide now, and he completely misses this second apex. So you have to double apex this corner. He's completely missed it. And look at how much I've pulled away. So let's go back to the beginning of that. Look at the difference in the cars. They're together there. And just because I held appropriate speed to hold the inside line and then double apexed, I pulled away 3 car lengths. So let's show you this on the replay. So the principle I want you to take on board here is that you're steering the car with your feet. What you're trying to do is make very minimal adjustments with the steering and avoid turning the wheels too much. So it's not as much steering input as you think. And then you're steering the car with the throttle. The more you throttle, the less the car is going to turn for that same given steering input. The less you throttle, the more the car is going to turn again for that same given steering input. What's happening here is that he has too much throttle because he's afraid to go slow. This is a very, very common thing. People don't like getting off of the loud pedal because that in your logic circuits translates to going slow. In this case, he's simply going too fast, and it ends up with a slower lap time because he's running around the outside of the track. So he does lift off the throttle, but it's too little, too late. Let's look at the steering inputs inside the car. Look how much steering lock he's got on. That left hand is almost up to about 11 o'clock. So at the same point in the track, the second apex, my left hand is at 10 o'clock. This is possible only because I'm carrying less speed, which enables me to turn less, but counterintuitively equates to a faster lap time. Turn 5. Now, to try and keep this video as short as possible, I need to really simplify some of these corners as much as I can. So we're only going to stick to the telemetry for this one, and I'm basically just going to show you the overhead view. I've got the cars reset again, so as we go into the corner, you'll see that I pull away. The first thing is, despite traveling slower than me because of the way he did turn 4, he actually brakes earlier than me. So he could definitely afford to brake later. And he's entering the corner slower at this point. You see he's braked earlier. I'm pulling away from him because he's braking too early. And then watch him catch up with me towards the apex. And then look at the speeds again up here. So now he's going faster than me. So despite braking really early, he actually ends up coming into the corner too fast. He's still going fast in, slow out, despite braking significantly earlier than I am. The second problem is track limits. So I'm not going to go to the replay for this one, but he just needs to be much further over to the white line and the curb. He's actually not. You can see that he's still on the tarmac track. We need to get over on the white line at the very least. A slightly wider line in and less apex speed would result in more rotation. That's basically what's going on here. So a bit counterintuitive, because he's probably thinking, hi Diogo, you're no doubt listening, he's probably thinking, yeah, but I braked so early in that corner to make sure I didn't go in too fast. What you've actually got to do here is brake later and then slow the car down more. That's where the lap time is. You want to have less apex speed here. You can see how he's doing 64.8. I'm doing 63.4. The last and final thing is he needs to coast for a little bit longer in the apex. So you can see there my brake release point. He stays on the brake a little bit too long. There we go. And then he puts the coast in, but it's a little bit too little too late, really. And then you can see I am using more track on the inside, but it's not a ton more. His track limits would be fine if his car was simply rotated more than me. Fine for his level, better than what he's currently doing for sure. So to summarize, brake later, use more track, and then slow the car down more in the final phase of the braking and let it coast. And then that results in more rotation, which is what allows me to be more aggressive on the throttle. So on to the chicane. Now, I've stopped the red line at the split, and look at the difference in speed. So again, it looks like not much, but it adds up over the lap. If anything, this means he should be braking slightly later than me. What he actually does is brake slightly earlier than me. What this then does is subconsciously, I see this all the time in students, you know that the car is going too slow. You can feel it. You're just not aware of it on a conscious level yet. So in order to compensate for the fact that the car is slowing down too much because you brake too early, he then starts trail braking too early. What he then does here, because he's trail braking earlier to try and keep the speed of the car up, watch what happens to the speed up here. So at first, he's slower than me. I'm going a lot faster. He backs off of the brake pedal to keep the speed of the car up. And then by the time we get to the point where I'm actually off of the brake altogether, he's now going faster than me. So it's gone from going slower than me here to braking earlier than me, and then trail braking earlier than me to keep the speed of the car up because he knows it's slowed down too much, to then the other extreme that he's now actually going faster than me heading into the corner. So when I have released the brake at the apex, I am doing 46 miles an hour. He's still on the brake at the apex, so he's on the brake past the apex, or at least too deep into the corner, let's say, and he's doing 1.7 miles an hour faster. So now he has to actually stay on the brake longer to slow the car down because he's now coming into the corner too fast. So how do you fix this corner? Brake a tiny bit later. We're talking maybe a car length, half a car length. And then make the brake trace look like this. Once again, this is a very slow first, second gear corner. And with high-speed braking zones into these type of corners, you don't really trail brake. You abuse the APS. Sharp ramp up, sharp ramp down. I then coast again. You can see that. There's my brake release. And there's me getting on the throttle. He doesn't coast. So at the moment he's released the brake, he's already on the throttle. He's actually overlapping. This causes bad rotation. In terms of the chicane itself, what's happening here, there you go, you can see his brake release point, and there's my brake release point. What's happening here is ultimately he's coming into the corner too fast. So let's reset them. So you can see he brakes a bit too early. There we go. Just needs to brake a tiny bit later. And initially he's trail braking because he feels the car slowing down too much. So you can see there that the car starts to catch up with me. That's because he's trail braking to make it pick up speed into the corner. And then it goes from one extreme to the other. The line's actually pretty good. His line's not bad, right? But then that early trail braking means the car doesn't slow down enough. And he's now coming into the corner too fast. Look at the speeds. So there you go. I've slowed it down a lot. This allows me to get more rotation. He's going too fast to get rotation. This allows me to get more rotation and get on the throttle. And because he came into the corner too fast, he's on the left-hand side of the track, whereas I'm in the middle. Actually, if I showed you Wins Ghost or any of the top 10 guys, they're actually slightly further over to the right-hand side than I am. I actually lost about 700-800ths of a second in this chicane. I didn't nail it. And you actually want to be slightly over to the right, not in the middle. But where you really don't want to be is on the left. Now, the way you get into the middle or on the right-hand side is slow the car down. Come into the corner slower. So, recap. Brake earlier. Stay harder on the brake for longer. Then release the brake earlier and stay tighter to the right-hand side. And this is how you get the car rotated. Look at the difference in the rotation right there. That is what allows me to get the throttle down more aggressively on the exit. That rotation that you're looking at right there. You can see the difference in the trajectory of where the cars are pointed. This is why I can be aggressive on the throttle. This is 90% of what throttle control is about. Rotation first allows you to get the throttle down. All those times that you think to yourself, I can't get the throttle down any harder or the car's going to spin, in my experience, you're right. The vast majority of coaching students, when they feel that the car's going to spin if they push the throttle any harder, it does. The problem is a lack of rotation, not throttle control. So turns 13, 14 and 15, it's basically just turn 13 and 15 in terms of braking zones. I'm just going to stick to the overhead view here because I want to simplify it for you. I know telemetry can be overwhelming. So I'm just going to let this play through and tell me if you can see what the problem is. To be fair, there are multiple problems, but with the B-rank driver, we really want to simplify it to the lowest hanging fruit. So, what do you see here? Right, let's go over it again, and I'll explain to you what I'm seeing. As I said, I've got the cars reset here so that they're together, and he pulls ahead of me in the braking zone. So he's going yet again faster into the corner than I am. And I come out of the corner faster than him. So once again, he's fast in, slow out. I'm slow in, fast out. Let's see it here again. Look at the gap. This is where the gap reaches its biggest here. And watch how he catches up with me. Now his line's okay, right? The entry line's okay. The apex and exit line isn't. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you can take that slightly narrower line. It does work. But see how he catches up with me here. So he's coming faster in. I'm going slower in. And you can see that looking at the speeds up here in the top right-hand corner. The fact that I am doing less forward speed here, this is what allows me to get more rotation. He's going too fast and misses the track limits, misses the apex. Again, You can see that up here, he's had to slow down on the apex. If we just back it up slightly, at this point, he's going faster than me. And now he's going slower than me because he's missing the apex. So first thing, if we're just going to simplify these two corners, because his brake traces and throttle traces actually look pretty good. The first thing is he's just got to slow the car down more on the entry so that he can rotate the car on the apex and be more aggressive on the throttle for both corners. A little bit too fast in, too slow out. Do you know what this means? So I asked you this exact question in the previous video I did that was a blueprint for how to go about time trialing, right? So if you watch that video, you should start to be getting clued in on what this means you need to do. And we'll wind backwards and we'll look here. So same problem here, not as severe, but it still exists here and it exists there. So I could critique him on his braking, absolutely. I could critique him on how long he's coasting for, getting on the throttle. We could talk about all of those things, but those are the more minor things. Because actually, if we just quickly go and look at the brake trace for this corner, that's not bad, right? And then look at the next one, even more impressive. So it's really just about the speed and the lines. He's got the control of the brake in these two corners. You can see that. He's got the control of the brake in these two corners. It's about the speed and the lines. So let me show you from a replay where the problem lies. So Diogo Silva's replay, let's take a look at the problems. Track limits, nowhere near the curb, let alone the white line. Same again there, we want to have the inside wheels on the green part of the curb. I'll explain that one in a minute. I got no problem with this line. I know I go wider, but I'd rather coaching students took the line that he's taking, because if you try to take the wider line, they end up usually going too wide. So I'm very happy with his line. The problem is a lack of rotation from this point onwards because he's going too fast, which results in not very good track limits. Let's go a little bit further forwards. There we go. So missing the track limits. Now, again, if you're a B-rank driver, you're probably looking at this and thinking, that's fine, isn't it? What's wrong with that? So let me show you my replay. So my replay, let's look at the differences. Track limits, you can see I'm actually on the white line, over the white line, actually on the curb. Wheels are actually inside the red and white curb on the green strip. This has two effects. Number one, look at the ridge of the inside of this curb. You can actually hook the tyres inside it and it pulls the car around the corner. The second effect it has is you're straightening the line because you're using more track. Now I do take this slightly wider line than him. I would encourage you to try and take Diogo's line if you're not at least like A+, because this wider line, people tend to screw it up more. Just take his slightly tighter line and be a bit more patient with the rotation. But because I'm going slower at this point, the car can rotate more, and look at the difference. So remember where his car was? Look where mine is. Now this might be, to be fair, a bit extreme. This is the very limit of what you can do in this corner. And I actually gained on Wynn's Ghost through this corner, and Wynn is a faster driver than me. No question about that. So, do you need to use as much track limits as this? No, of course you don't. But you don't want to be wide of the white line. At the very least, just do the same thing that I said to do over at that corner and get the wheels hooked inside this curb. So you can still be with your wheels only half as far over as I am, and you're going to get a lot more rotation. So to sum up these two corners, he's got to enter them a little bit slower and then exit them a little bit faster. And at the same time, he's got to use more track on the entry, apex, and exit. Straighten in the lines, slower in, faster out. Only once you've executed those things correctly is it worth then talking about the braking and the throttle application to improve it even more, because his braking and throttle applications are actually pretty good. Once again, I've got the cars overlaid. I've got them reset here. So you're going to see that as we enter the corner, I start braking before him. He now overtakes me. This is literally what happens. You see, I'm ahead of him here, and he literally overtakes me because he's coming in faster. You see that there, 65.3, 63.3. So 2 miles an hour faster at this point. Look at the speed difference there, because I've already started braking quite a while ago. He's doing basically 6 miles an hour faster. The line is also too tight, so the line does need to be wider. We'll show you this on the replay maybe. But because he's come into the corner too fast, now when we get to the crucial point of trying to rotate the car, his car can't rotate. And I basically switch back on him and get much more aggressive exit. Why does that happen? Because if we rewind it to this point here, look at the difference in the trajectory of the cars. Oops, too far. Look at the difference in the trajectory of the cars. It is simply easier for me to get the throttle down because my car is pointed more in the direction that it needs to go, whereas his car isn't. And that's what enables me to be harder on the throttle here. So once again, we could critique the braking, we could critique the coasting, we could critique the throttle application. All of that would be relevant stuff to talk about. But the lowest hanging fruit is brake earlier and slow the car down more. Take a wider line and just be more patient to let the car rotate before you get on the throttle. So just to wrap this up by showing you the final corner in the replays, because it really helps drive it home. Like I said, there's a lot to critique here. We could really go over this corner in a lot of detail, but we just can't make the video that long, and you need to simplify things to the lowest hanging fruit for drivers of this level. So what you're looking at is the moment that Diogo gets on the throttle, the exact frame where he gets on the throttle. Look where the car is pointing. It's pointing directly at that Marshall box, okay? Let's now look at the steering input. So left hand is, let's say, between 11 and 12 o'clock. He's trying to get the throttle down whilst the car is pointed at that Marshall box with this much steering in. Let's have a look at my replay. So this is my replay. And to the untrained eye, you would look at this and go, I don't see the difference. You're pointed directly at that Marshall box. It's exactly the same. So what are the differences? Number one, I slowed the car down more on the entry, remember? He effectively overtook me in the entry. Speed and rotation have a direct relationship. The faster a car is going, the less it can rotate on its own axis and vice versa. So number one is I'm getting more rotation because I'm going slower in the entry. Number two, I took a slightly wider line. It's not massively wider, but it was enough to be able to rotate the car more than the narrow line which Diogo took. The third part of it, let's look at the steering input. My hand is rotated further than his. His hand was about 11 o'clock. Mine is gone past 12, almost at 1 o'clock. You are literally looking at the extra rotation. What this means is that when I get on the throttle, I can almost immediately start unwinding the steering. This is what allows me to get the throttle down harder, again, more rotation. Whereas what Diogo has to do here whilst he's getting the throttle down is keep turning on the exit. He can't unwind the steering as quick as I can, which therefore means he can't get the throttle down as quick as I can. So you see that there. The moment I start getting on the throttle, I'm unwinding the steering. This doesn't happen in Diogo's replay. He has to hold his hand about where it is right now and feather the throttle to stop the car from running wide and understeering too much. And that's why he misses the apex. So what can we say in conclusion? Did you spot the theme that developed through this analysis? In virtually every single corner, he was too fast in and too slow out. In my recent 6 tips video, I said that the top drivers understand slow in, fast out. And you probably thought, yeah, I know, I've heard that before. Does it make sense now? Sometimes Diogo Silva was too fast in by braking too late. Sometimes he was too fast in by braking too early and trail braking too early. But the overall effect was always the same. He lacked rotation and got a bad exit. So now you're probably asking yourself if slow in, fast out is your problem. To answer that, you only need to ask yourself one question. Are you a top driver? If you're not consistently posting top 100 times, this is your problem too. The only thing that changes is by how much. If we compared me to wind, you would see the same thing, only on a much smaller scale. Without exception, the faster someone is as a driver, the better their corner exits are, sim racing or real life. Thank you for watching, guys. Get out of here and go race.